the last breath of humanity. The Earth was no longer the place it once was. Once teeming with life, the cities now stood silent, their towering structures crumbling under the weight of time. The once vibrant planet was now a wasteland, a shadow of its former glory. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the sun's light barely pierced through the heavy clouds that had covered the skies for years. Humanity was believed to be extinct, wiped out by an invasion from an alien race that had arrived without warning. But as the world lay in ruins, there were whispers among the few survivors that humanity had not vanished. Some believed that the humans who had escaped the initial slaughter had hidden deep within the Earth's core, evolving to survive the harsh conditions that the planet had become. They had adapted in ways that no one could have ever imagined. In a secluded part of the world far from the chaos and destruction of the cities, a small group of humans still lived. They had found shelter in the remains of an ancient forest, where the thick trees provided a semblance of protection from the alien invaders. The group lived in the shadows, constantly hiding from the creatures that ruled the Earth now. The aliens, monstrous and powerful, had claimed the land as their own, never sparing a thought for the fragile humans they had driven to the edge of extinction. Among these survivors was a woman named Kara. She had lived through the chaos, witnessed the fall of her people, and had seen the planet change in ways that no one could have predicted. Kara was different from others in the group. She was stronger, faster, and more resourceful than anyone else. The other survivors looked to her for leadership, and she had become their guiding light in these dark times. One night, as Kara sat by a dying fire staring into the cold distance, she felt a strange sense of something stirring within her. It wasn't just the usual fear or the weight of survival that pressed upon her. It was something deeper, something primal. She felt a power within her that she couldn't explain. It was as if her body had begun to change, adapting to the environment in ways that no human had before. Kara was no longer just a survivor. She was evolving into something more. But she didn't know yet if it was a blessing or a curse. In the distance, the sound of alien footsteps echoed through the silent woods. The creatures were always near, always searching for the last remnants of humanity. Kara knew that it was only a matter of time before the aliens would find them. But she also knew that if humanity had any chance of surviving, it would have to fight back. The Earth might have been dying, but Kara was determined to see it through, and she wasn't alone. As the survivors gathered their belongings and prepared to move deeper into the forest, Kara led them with a steady hand. She was their leader, their hope. They didn't know it yet, but they were about to awaken something that would change the course of history. Humanity was not gone. It had evolved. And they were about to take their first steps toward reclaiming the Earth from the alien invaders who had thought them extinct. The evolution begins. The forest was eerily quiet, the only sound the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. The survivors had been moving for days, seeking a place deeper within the wilderness, hoping to stay one step ahead of the alien patrols. But Kara couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed within her. Every step she took, every breath she drew, felt different, stronger. She could hear the world around her with a clarity she had never known before. The sound of distant birds, the crackling of twigs underfoot, and the hum of the wind through the trees. They all felt sharper, more pronounced. At first, Kara thought it was just her mind playing tricks on her, the result of endless days of survival and stress. But as she moved further into the forest, the changes became undeniable. Her senses were heightened, her reflexes quicker, and her strength, well, it was beyond anything she had ever experienced. One evening, as they set up camp, she noticed something strange. As she bent down to gather firewood, a branch snapped off a nearby tree, falling directly toward one of the younger survivors. In a flash, Kara reached out and caught the branch midair, barely flinching as it struck her hands. She stood there, stunned, her heart pounding in her chest. The others watched in awe, not understanding how she had moved so fast or with such force. "How did you?" one of the survivors whispered, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Kara was silent for a moment, trying to make sense of the impossible. She had always been quick, But this was something entirely different. She could feel the energy coursing through her veins like a power she never knew existed. It was like her body had adapted to the environment in ways that no human ever could. She was becoming something more than a mere survivor. As the days went by, Kara began to experiment with her new abilities. She could hear the whispers of the wind, sense the movement of animals in the underbrush, and even feel the subtle tremors of the earth beneath her feet. It was as if she had become attuned to the very pulse of the planet. And when she ran, she felt lighter, faster, as if gravity itself had softened its hold on her. The other survivors started to notice the changes too. Some were scared, unsure of what was happening to Kara and, by extension, to themselves. But others saw the potential. If they could survive, if they could tap into the power that was awakening within them, they might stand a chance against the aliens who had decimated their species. It wasn't just Kara. One by one, the survivors began to feel it too. Their senses were sharpening, their bodies growing stronger, more resilient. It was as though the very act of surviving in such harsh conditions had triggered something within them. A dormant gene, a hidden force that had always been there, waiting to be unlocked. Kara gathered the group around the fire that night. The sight, flames flickering in the still air. "We're not just surviving anymore," she said, her voice steady and filled with purpose. "We're evolving. This is our chance. We were thought to be extinct, but the truth is, we've changed. We've become something new, something the aliens never expected." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group, though many still had questions, doubts, but Kara could see the fire in their eyes, the spark of hope that had been long extinguished now flickering back to life. They were ready to fight, ready to take back what was once theirs, and as the stars above glimmered in the vast, silent sky, Kara knew that this was only the beginning. Humanity wasn't dead. It had been reborn, and with this new strength, they would reclaim Earth from the alien invaders. One battle at a time. The alien threat, the days of hiding in the shadows, were over. Kara could feel it in her bones, the shifting of something dark on the horizon. The aliens had always been a constant threat, lurking in the wreckage of the world they had conquered, but now their presence felt more oppressive, more imminent. As the evolved humans grew stronger, so did their enemies resolve to wipe out the last remnants of humanity. The skies above had once been clear, dotted with the occasional bird or plane. Now they were filled with the alien ships, their sleek metallic forms cutting through the clouds like predators stalking their prey. The invaders had not just claimed the land, they had built their empire above it. Their ships were a constant reminder that Earth no longer belonged to humanity, it belonged to them. One evening, as Kara and the survivors made their way through the dense forest, a distant hum reached her ears. She paused, her heightened senses picking up the sound before anyone else could hear it. The unmistakable sound of alien engines. "Hide," she whispered urgently. The survivors scattered, moving with quiet precision into the underbrush, their new instincts kicking in. Kara watched as a small fleet of alien ships appeared on the horizon, their dark silhouettes blocking out the last rays of the setting sun. The aliens had learned to adapt, just as humanity had. They had begun to search more aggressively for the evolved humans, believing them to be the last piece of the puzzle in securing their control over Earth. The once dominant race had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now they were desperate to ensure no trace of the human species remained. Kara crouched low, her heart pounding in her chest. The ships hovered just above the ground, their shadow casting a chill over the forest. The survivors held their breath, trying to remain as still as possible. The alien commander, a tall, imposing figure with glowing red eyes, stepped out from one of the ships. His armor gleamed in the moonlight and his presence radiated power. Kara could feel the tension in the air, as if every movement, every sound could mean the end of them all. "The humans are not extinct." The commander's voice crackled through a speaker, echoing through the trees. "We know they are here. Find them. Destroy them." Kara clenched her fists. The aliens had come too close this time. She could feel the weight of their threat pressing down on her. But she wasn't afraid. No, the fear was gone. With each passing day, as she and the others grew stronger, the fear had been replaced by something else, something primal. The will to fight. "We need to move," Kara whispered to her group, signaling for them to follow her. They had to make a decision: fight or flee. But Kara knew that there was no more running. The aliens were not just hunting them, they were hunting every trace of humanity. The survivors had to make their stand now, or they would be wiped out once and for all. As the ships began to descend, the first wave of alien soldiers stepping onto the ground, Kara looked at her team. The evolution within them had made them something the aliens couldn't predict, something they couldn't control. The time had come to show them what humanity had become. "We're not hiding anymore," Kara said, her voice calm but filled with purpose. "We fight now." The tension was thick in the air, but there was no turning back. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and Kara and the evolved humans were ready to prove that humanity was far from extinct. They were the apex predators now, and the aliens had no idea what they were about to face. Rising resistance. The night after the alien assault, the survivors moved swiftly through the forest, their hearts still pounding from the close encounter. But the fear was quickly transforming into something else: determination. Kara had seen it in their eyes, that flicker of hope that had been buried under years of hardship. Humanity might have been pushed to the edge, but it had never truly been defeated. And now, it was time to fight back. They couldn't hide forever. The alien presence was growing stronger, and the time for evasion was running out. Kara gathered the survivors around a campfire, the flames dancing in the cold night air. They were tired, hungry, and scared, but there was a new energy among them, a sense of unity that had never existed before. "We can't wait for the aliens to come to us," Kara began, her voice steady but fierce. "We've spent too long running, hiding in the dark. It's time we turn the tables. It's time we start fighting back." Her words resonated with the survivors. The feeling of being hunted, of always being on the defensive, was wearing them down. The thought of fighting back, of taking control of their fate, sparked a fire within them. But the question remained: how could they stand against an alien force that had wiped out so much of humanity with such ease? "Together," Kara continued, "we can do this. We're no longer just survivors. We're the next step in human evolution. We've adapted, and now it's our turn to make the aliens realize that they made a mistake. They underestimated us." The survivors nodded, their faces set with resolve. But Kara knew that words alone wouldn't be enough to ignite the revolution they needed. Action was the only way forward. Over the next few days, Kara and her group began scouting the alien camps. They moved quietly, blending into the shadows, their senses heightened by their evolving bodies. As they watched the aliens from a distance, Kara began to notice something. The invaders were powerful, yes, but they weren't invincible. They had weaknesses, just like any predator. The aliens were relying heavily on their advanced technology, ships, weapons, and the intimidating force they brought with them. But their ground forces seemed less coordinated, more dependent on their tech than on true combat skills. This was their vulnerability. The survivors had evolved into something more adaptable, more agile. It was time to use that to their advantage. The first strike came without warning. Kara and her team attacked a smaller alien outpost in the dead of night. They had no fancy weapons, just their raw strength and sharpened instincts. With silent precision, they took down the guards, sabotaged the alien equipment, and left without a trace. It was a small victory, but it was enough to send a message. The aliens had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to survive, and to strike back. Kara knew this was just the beginning. The survivors weren't alone in this fight. Across the planet, there were others like them, people who had survived, who had evolved, and who were ready to rise. As word spread, more survivors began to join the resistance. Kara led them with a new sense of purpose. They weren't just a scattered group of survivors anymore. They were a force, and they were only getting stronger. Every small victory gave them more confidence, more courage. The aliens might have thought humanity was extinct, but now the real battle was about to begin. In the shadows, the alien forces began to stir. They had underestimated the humans before, but now, something far more dangerous was emerging. Humanity was evolving, and the aliens had no idea what they had unleashed. The betrayal. The resistance was growing stronger with each passing day. Kara and her team had become a well-oiled machine, their strikes on alien outposts more frequent and bolder. With every victory, the survivors felt a surge of hope. They weren't just fighting for their lives anymore, they were fighting for the future of humanity. And as the number of their ranks swelled, it seemed like the tide was finally turning in their favor. But amidst the success, something dark and unsettling was beginning to stir. Kara had noticed the subtle shift in one of her closest allies, a man named Jace. He had been with her from the beginning, one of the first survivors to join her cause. Strong, loyal, and unwavering, Jace had been instrumental in leading small squads into alien-controlled territories, but lately he had become distant, his focus wavering. His movements were more guarded, his words clipped and colder than before. Kara brushed it off at first. She had too much on her plate, new alliances to form, new strategies to devise. But her instincts, honed by her evolution, told her something was wrong. Late one evening, after the group had settled into their new base camp, Kara decided to confront him. She found him alone by the edge of the forest, staring out into the dark expanse as if searching for something that wasn't there. "Jace," she said softly, stepping up beside him. He didn't turn at first, and for a moment Kara almost thought he hadn't heard her. Then he looked over, his eyes guarded. "What is it, Kara?" His voice was low, strained. "Something's off with you lately," she said, her gaze steady. "You've been acting different. Is there something you're not telling me?" Jace hesitated for a moment, then let out a sigh. He looked down at the ground, unable to meet her eyes. "It's not what you think. I've just been thinking about everything, about how far we've come and what we're doing. I don't know if we're ready for what's coming." Kara's brow furrowed. "We're ready. We've been through worse than this." He shook his head slowly. "It's not that. It's something else. Something I can't ignore anymore." Before Kara could ask further, there was a faint rustling from behind. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end, and she immediately felt the shift in the air. She turned to see a figure emerge from the darkness, a tall, cloaked figure that moved with eerie precision. It was too late to react. The figure pulled back its hood, revealing an alien soldier, but with a strange, almost human-like face. His features twisted, a grotesque mockery of what humans once looked like. Kara's heart sank as she realized what had just happened. Jace wasn't the ally she thought he was. His role in the resistance had been a ruse, a carefully planned deception. He had been working with the aliens all along. "I'm sorry, Kara," Jace said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't have a choice. They have my family. They know everything about us, where we're hiding, where we're going. If I didn't cooperate, they would have killed them." Kara stood frozen, her mind racing. Betrayal. The word felt like acid in her mouth. The very person she had trusted, the one she thought she could rely on, had sold them out. The alien stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Kara. "It's over," he said coldly. "Your resistance is a joke. We've known about you from the start. You're nothing but a temporary inconvenience." Kara's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Anger, disbelief, betrayal. But in that moment, something shifted inside her. The fear, the doubt, it all vanished. She was no longer the frightened survivor she had once been. She had become something far more powerful. Without a word, Kara launched herself at the alien soldier, her enhanced strength pushing her forward with an intensity she hadn't felt before. The alien barely had time to react before she was upon him, her fists a blur of raw power. Jace stood frozen, his face a mixture of guilt and fear. The fight was brutal, quick, and decisive. The alien soldier never stood a chance. Kara's rage fueled her movements, and in seconds he was down, his body crumpled to the ground. She turned to Jace, her eyes burning with fury. "You've betrayed us all," she said, her voice deadly calm. "And now you've sealed your fate." Jace dropped too, his knees, tears welling in his eyes. "I didn't have a choice." Kara's eyes hardened. "Everyone has a choice, Jace. You made yours." The betrayal shook the resistance to its core. Trust, once the glue that held the group together, had been shattered. But for Kara, the betrayal ignited something far more dangerous. A hunger for vengeance. She would not let this betrayal go unpunished. She would make sure the aliens knew that humanity was no longer the hunted. It was the hunters now. And so, the resistance grew darker, more determined. And with each step, Kara's resolve solidified. They had been betrayed, yes, but they would rise again. The fight was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. The final showdown. The days after the betrayal were a blur of fury and determination. The resistance, now fractured and scarred, had to rebuild. Trust had been shattered, but something far more powerful emerged in its place. A relentless thirst for victory. Kara, once the hopeful leader, had become a force of vengeance, her every decision driven by the desire to wipe out the aliens and reclaim Earth for humanity. The time for small strikes was over. The resistance had gathered strength, and Kara knew that if they were to have any hope of victory, they would need to take down the alien stronghold once and for all. The alien base, located deep in a ruined city that had once been a thriving metropolis, was heavily guarded. The walls were thick with alien technology, and the skies above were constantly patrolled by their ships. But Kara was no longer afraid. The evolution within her and her people had made them something more, something the aliens could not comprehend. She stood at the front of the newly formed resistance army, the cold wind whipping through the trees, the sound of alien engines humming in the distance. They were getting closer. Kara felt the weight of what they were about to do. This was no longer a fight for survival. This was the fight for humanity's future. "We've all lost something," Kara said, her voice low but filled with fierce conviction. "Family, friends, homes, we've lost everything, but we're still here, and we're not going to let them finish what they started. Tonight we end this." The soldiers, both human and evolved, nodded in agreement. The past few days had been filled with intense training, and each member of the resistance had become more skilled, more formidable. The alien technology that had once seemed impenetrable now seemed like a puzzle, one that the humans had finally cracked. "We move out in 5 minutes," Kara commanded. "No mistakes. We get in, take out the main control center, and we leave. Fast. We're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. We're fighting for the future." As the resistance army moved into position under the cover of darkness, Kara's heart raced, but there was no fear in her. The aliens had hunted them, chased them to the ends of the earth, and now the tables were about to turn. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now they would pay the price. The first assault came quickly. Kara led a small squad to infiltrate the outer perimeter of the alien base, their movement swift and silent. The aliens had set up a series of automated defense systems, but the humans were no longer just prey. They had learned to adapt, to outsmart their hunters. With precision, they dismantled the defense mechanisms, taking out the guards one by one. But as they approached the heart of the alien base, a familiar presence stopped Kara dead in her tracks. It was the alien commander, the one who had led the initial assault on humanity all those years ago. His glowing red eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, it was as if time stood still. The hatred between them was palpable, a seething tension that crackled in the air. "You think you can defeat us?" The commander's voice echoed, a mocking tone in his words. "You, who are nothing but a fleeting shadow in the grand scheme of the universe?" Kara stepped forward, her eyes burning with a fury she could no longer contain. "You were wrong," she said, her voice steady. Humanity isn't a shadow. We're the storm, and we're here to wipe you out. The alien commander raised his weapon, but Kara was faster. With a fluid motion, she leaped forward, using her enhanced strength to disarm him in an instant. The commander staggered back, surprised by her speed, but he wasn't finished. He reached for a hidden blade, but before he could strike, Kara delivered a powerful blow that sent him sprawling to the ground. "This ends now," she whispered, standing over him. She could feel the weight of every loss, every battle, every scar that had been inflicted on her and her people. The commander was just another obstacle in their path, one that would be vanquished. The resistance swarmed the control center, taking out alien soldiers with a combination of precision and raw power. The air was thick with tension as the final push began. Kara could feel the pulse of the earth beneath her feet, as if the planet itself was ready for this battle. Humanity had been broken, but it had healed, evolved, and now it was ready to rise from the ashes. With a final resounding explosion, the alien control center went up in flames. The sky lit up with the orange glow of the blast, and the sound of the alien ships falling from the sky reverberated through the ground. The battle was won. The aliens had been defeated. Kara stood amidst the wreckage, her heart still pounding from the intensity of the fight. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, the earth itself seeming to breathe a sigh of relief. Humanity had reclaimed its home, and the alien invaders were no more. But as the resistance celebrated, Kara's mind raced. This battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The universe was vast, and the aliens had only been the beginning. Whatever came next, humanity would face it together, with the strength of apex predators. The final showdown had been fought, and humanity had emerged victorious. Humanity's victory. The night after the final battle felt different. The air was quieter, as if the earth itself was taking a moment to breathe, to heal. The fires from the alien stronghold had long since died down, leaving only the smoke and the lingering scent of destruction behind. But amidst the ruins there was a profound sense of relief. Humanity had done the impossible. They had risen from the ashes, fought back against the overwhelming alien force, and reclaimed their world. Kara stood alone atop the remnants of a shattered building, gazing out over the smoldering city. The skyline was barely recognizable now, half the structures reduced to rubble, but the stars above, so bright and endless, seemed to promise a new beginning. She could feel the weight of the battle, the years of fear, loss, and survival, all pressing down on her shoulders. But she knew deep in her bones that they had won, and that victory meant more than just survival. It meant the rebirth of humanity. The survivors had gathered, their faces lit by the flickering flames of makeshift fires as they celebrated their hard-earned triumph. The alien ships had fallen from the sky, their once imposing forms now nothing more than scrap metal. The command center had been destroyed, its core systems wiped out in the blast. The alien invaders were no more. But Kara's thoughts were far from the celebrations. She knew this victory, though monumental, was just the first step. The Earth was theirs again, but there were still questions left unanswered. Questions about the vastness of the universe, about what other alien species might still be lurking, waiting for their chance to invade. The aliens were gone, but Kara knew the fight for humanity's future had only just begun. Her mind was interrupted as footsteps approached from behind. She turned to see a young survivor, a woman who had once been too afraid to fight, now standing tall, a proud smile on her face. The woman's eyes sparkled with something new: hope, determination, and the recognition that humanity had not only survived but had evolved. "We did it," the woman said, her voice full of awe. "We actually did it." Kara nodded, her expression softening. "Yes, we did. But there's still so much to do. This war, this battle, it's just the start of something bigger. We've only begun to awaken." The woman looked out over the city, her gaze following Kara's. "Do you think they'll come back? The aliens?" Kara paused, considering the Question. They might. Or maybe there are others out there waiting for their chance. But one thing I know for sure, humanity will be ready. We've evolved, we've adapted, and we've learned to fight. We're not the prey anymore. We're the hunters. The woman nodded, her confidence growing. We won't let them take our home again. Kara smiled. No, we won't. The next few days were a whirlwind of rebuilding. The survivors worked together to clear the debris, gather supplies, and fortify their new settlements. They were a community again, and each person's contribution, no matter how small, mattered. What had once been a fractured group of survivors was now a united force. Humanity's last hope had become humanity's greatest strength. As the survivors began to reclaim what they had lost, Kara watched them with a sense of pride. They were no longer the broken remnants of a fallen race. They were the new humanity, stronger, smarter, and more united than ever before. The earth, though scarred, was healing, and the future stretched out before them, wide open and full of possibilities. Kara knew the road ahead would be long and uncertain. The universe was vast, and there was so much they didn't understand. But one thing was certain. Humanity had survived. And in that survival they had become something more, something the universe would never forget. As she stood at the edge of the city, looking out at the horizon, Kara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The fight for Earth had been won, but the true battle was just beginning, the battle to ensure humanity's place in the stars. And as she turned to rejoin her people, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as apex predators, as humans. And for the first time in a long while, Kara allowed herself to believe in the future of Earth and of humanity, the future they had fought so hard to create.